Hi guys, welcome to the TCL Global Podcast. This time we're talking about the real nitty-gritty details of the student visa applications, all the ins and outs. We have a lovely guest, Mr. Shiful Jahangir. He is the TCL Global Manager from Bangladesh, and he's going to tell you everything you need to know when it comes to the UK student visa application process. So welcome, Mr. Russell. It's lovely to have you here. Would you like to introduce yourself a bit?
Thank you very much for inviting me for this episode. My name is Shiful Been Jahangir. People call me Russell Jahangir. So I'm working at Uttara branch, which is in Dhaka. I'm working here as a branch manager. So today, hopefully, I'm going to talk about visa and visa-related information with you. I've been working here for more than 1 year. So yeah, that would be me.
Great. Yeah. So you're going to teach us a lot today. Can you give us the general basics of the nature of the visa application process? Just an overview before we get into the details.
All right. Yeah, sure. Normally, when we make application in the UK universities, then students receive their CAS letter. So CAS letter means confirmation of study. So once student receive their CAS letter, and then they can start their visa application. Before they start their visa application, they need some documents to be ready. For example, their bank statement, and it needs to be mature. 28 days is maturity date. At the same time, they also need their TB test report and their CAS letter before they start their application process.
Right, and so this is a very basic. So correct me if I'm wrong, but also the TB test is also specific in certain cities. It's specific hospitals or clinics, you can say, that are verified by the UK embassy, right?
Yes. We have two UK VI verified medical center in Bangladesh, one in Dhaka and the another one in Sylhet. So only TB test report from these two medical center is approved by the UK VI. So a student must be they must ensure that they get their TB test report from an authorized medical center.
Right. Yeah. And there's no exception. I think some people are thinking if the bank statement is not mature, can they still apply, or are they recommended to wait a bit? What do you say?
I don't advise them to submit their visa without their mature bank statement. So it's better to get their documents in proper place than make the visa application. It's easier and much safer to get the visa.
Yeah, of course. And say they made a mistake on the application and they submitted it. What should they do now?
All right, this thing does happen a lot these days. So the thing is, if you did that mistake and you submitted your visa application already, so you cannot change or edit anything in the visa application. So what you can do, the day you got your appointment, you just write an acknowledgement letter to UKVI saying that in that section of the visa application you made that particular mistakes, whereas it's supposed to be this information, and mistakenly you wrote this information. So once you clearly state it in your acknowledgement letter, that's perfectly okay for UKPI.
Yeah, so there's a backup for that, but
yes.
Just for students, I think it's a big opportunity. They should always be careful and triple check before they submit. So there's a unique thing about the UK. A lot of countries, student visas don't do that, but for UK they have the health insurance, the IHS, right? And so to apply for the visa also, you'd have to pay for the amount of the health insurance with the UK, I think, government, perhaps it is. I mean, you know better, so why don't you explain that? That's just my understanding so far.
Okay, all right. So while students are making their visa application, so after completing their visa application section, then they have to go to IHS website, and the UKVI portal automatically take you to that IHS website where you have to make the payment through a Visa card or MasterCard, and per year you have to pay approximately £470 And then if your course is like for, let's say, if you're doing a master's, so that course duration would be 1.5 years. So and you multiply that amount with 1.5, and that will give you 705 pound to be exact. And that much amount you need to pay on for your IHS insurance, and you can do it on their portal.
Okay, so that seems very straightforward. It seems like the UK visa application just takes you directly there. So if it's a bachelor's, that means, let's say it's a 4 years bachelor's, so then it would be like, multiply by 4 the per year charge, right? Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
So let's, talk about a situation where, maybe some people are discouraged to apply because they're thinking they got a visa refusal from another country. Say that's a situation. Do you think they should hide it? They should mention it? Should they be discouraged by it?
Well, first thing first, student must not lie to the UKVI because they will find it out eventually. So what there are some students, they actually think that if you hide it, the UKVI may never find it out, but which is not true. So my recommendation would be always ensure that if your visa refusal information must be included in the UK visa application, and at the same time you need to also produce the documents, the reason you got rejected from the other country, and you have to mention it in the visa application. Without that, I can assure you that you won't get your visa. So it's better to put the information there and hope for the best. And from my experience, I have seen like many students, they got student visa rejection from USA or Canada, but they actually do get the visa from UK. So don't worry about it. Just put it there and you will get your visa.
Exactly.
That would be my advice.
Yeah, there's nothing to hide and there's nothing to worry about. And one country rejects you does not mean another country will not reject you. But I think a main concern for students often, especially from the countries we come from, our economy is not as, let's say, like powerful compared to like the British or whatever. So then financial concerns obviously come along, and maybe a student is looking for a sponsorship or someone is willing to sponsor them. So how does the financial sponsorship work? Who can sponsor them? Can you talk about that?
Yes, sure. In the UK, for UK visa, we actually recommend students to be their self-sponsor. So that means like the amount of money you need to show in the bank statement, you just keep it in your own account for 28 days, and the amount we can calculate it like is 1 year of their tuition fees plus 1 year of their living cost. So if you add that, the same amount of money you need to keep in your own bank account for 28 days, and that's perfectly okay. So the good thing about if student is self-sponsored, that means they don't have to show any other additional documents, for example source of income or tax return, etc. Whereas it is okay if students, their parents or their first grade can be their sponsor, but in that case, their sponsor needs to show their proper documents, for example, their source of income and their tax clearance certificate, etc., etc. And also they need to provide a consent letter for using their fund. So in that case, I would actually, for UK students, so I recommend students to use their own bank account. Is safer and easier. But at the same time, there are also some certain cases their government can be a sponsor, and to some extent their employer can be their sponsor.
Okay. And in the circumstance that, let's say, the institution is a sponsor, maybe it's a grant, maybe it's a master's or PhD student, so then I'm sure like the institution will have to send a sponsorship letter, right?
Yes. In that case, while you are making the application to the university, you already you send that sponsorship letter to the university. So then they mention it in their cast letter. So while you are making the visa application, you just put exact the same information over there that you are sponsored by someone or some government or some institution. In that case, so you don't have to pay your IHS fees and to some extent like visa fees as well. So that's why you can do that as well.
Okay, so that I think you've clarified a lot of things, but I want to know. There's this common misconception that, oh, you shouldn't mention your relatives, or some people say you should mention your relatives. So this is a gray area when the section comes up asking about if you have any relatives in the country.
Right. So I do also get that a lot. So what I suggest to my student is, like, if your first blood, anyone from your first blood, which is your parents or your brother or your siblings, anyone is there, so it's better to put the information there. Again, you cannot hide it from UKVI because they already got all the information. And if you have like any distant relatives or someone, then it's not necessary to put their information in the visa application.
Right. Okay. So yeah, you've gotten into a lot of detail. Thank you so much about the application process. But then the next step comes, right? After you submitted the application, so you have to book an appointment with the embassy or VFS. Maybe you can mention for people who don't know what VFS is, what exactly that is, if that's necessary, or really just what the booking process for the appointment is.
Okay, since I told you earlier about the visa application process, so once you completed visa application, then you go to IHS website. Once you pay the IHS fees, then the website will redirect you to UKVI website again, and there you will have the option to pay UKVI visa application fees. Once you paid the visa application fees, then it will take it to you the next portal, and over there you will have the opportunity to choose your appointment date, and you can book your appointment date from there.
Okay, so that also seems straightforward. And now
it's very easier.
Yeah, now I'm at the center. Now what do I do? Some people worry like the documents. That's the real question. What documents to take?
Right. So once you get your visa application, once you get your appointment, then there will be a portal. It will show you that visa application document checklist. So you just download it from there, and then you have to check like all the documents you took, and then in that checklist you check all the documents you have, and in the bottom of that checklist you need to sign it, and you have to take it to you while you are facing the embassy. I also probably I need to mention here like the type of documents you need to submit to the visa application center, which is first of all your passport, which is really mandatory. Along with that, your cash letter, you have to submit that as well. Then you need your bank statement, which is your proof of your finance. Then for engineering student, they need attached certificate, and then they also need their if any student have their dependent with them, so they need to actually provide the relationship certificate. For partners is marriage certificate, and for young kids they need to show their birth certificate as well. Along with that, they need to also take their TB test report, and then if they have any sponsor, anyone is sponsoring them, so that consent letter from the sponsor, you have to take that as well while you are attending the visa interview. And at the same time, it's better to keep all your documents, like academic documents, with you. So if they ask or they require, so that you can produce that.
Right. Okay. So can you clarify for me? Some places, for example, at least in Pakistan, we don't necessarily have an interview here. We have more of a biometric, and they check your documents.
I mean, same here.
Okay.
Actually, yeah.
Because when people think interview, for example, the US visa, they ask you very straightforward questions. It is like an interview. But with the UK, it's less maybe scary. You can say it's just to make sure your documents are fine and things like that.
That's right. Yes, that's right.
Right.
Yes, that's right.
So let's see. Let me just recap for us, and then you can tell me if I'm wrong. So you go online, you fill out the application for the UK visa. You first have to pay the IHS, and then you can pay for the visa. Now your application is complete. Then you've booked a date, and then you go to the center, and then you wait for your visa. What's the wait like, if you want to talk about that? That's
after you submit your visa, submit your documents, it might take 2 to 3 weeks to get your visa, depending on the country and the center you submitted your documents for. Usually it's 2 to 3 weeks.
Right. Okay. And yeah, I've also heard that it's recommended not to visit unless they've emailed you to come collect your passport. Right. And maybe one last thing about the IHS, because that thing is really standing out to me. I think people wonder why or what is the reason to pay for insurance, because in our countries we don't really not everybody chooses or goes for insurance when it comes to health. But it is a very important resource for students, and it helps them. That health insurance will help them in case they have any health concerns or issues. So, if anyone is thinking, is there a way to avoid it? There's no way to avoid it, right? You have to pay it, and it is for your own benefit, right?
Yes.
So, is there any last advice, specific details, guidance for people about the visa application process before we end this interview or podcast?
All right. While making the visa application is more or less is common sense, right? So if you use your common sense, you can get it. It's not very complicated, it's very easy, and you just follow the processes. So once you do that, and with a little bit of confidence, if you can do it, I'm sure anyone can do it. It's not very complicated. It sounds very complicated, but trust me, it's not. It's very easy. So if anyone wants to make a visa application, no need to panic. Just follow all the instruction, and everyone will do great. I believe that.
I'm sure. I think you're right. The most important thing is to not worry about it. It's not actually as scary as it seems.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's an exciting process. You're going to a new country. You're going to learn so much, and that's part of the process.
Yes.
So once again, thank you so much. So, very wonderful information. I really hope it helped our viewers, and it was so great that you were the one who was able to share that with us. And with that, I'd like to wrap up this episode. Thank you so much, Mr. Russell, and take care.
Thank you very much for having me here.